nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? Man, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause, now that I can see the cause so clearly. I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me. I will pick my targets and assassinate them lyrically. I will bring a mountain to the town square, hook them to the pillory and leave them there. Hillary, I'll see you there. Hillary, I'll see you there. You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? Welcome to the fantasy of rhetoric. Welcome to the last of the free speech while we can get it. And I promise you can get it. All you corporate Democrats, second wave Confederates, GOP illusionists, and neo-Nazi bureaucrats. And Stephen fucking Miller, I will see you in the aftermath. When all the laws are dust, there's just moral justice after that. And I will hunt you through the wasteland if it comes to that. So I can rub you in the dirt like a cheap human Brillo pad. I can sleep fine when our beds are burning, Stephen, but I'll turn around and run into the blaze to get my pillow back. As long as I can lay my head down, I can live with that. I can deal with a little ash. I can feel like a little of the old me burn with the bad and the rest of my past. The old world where we all lived and we can't get back. The old world where you didn't give and you'd still get back. Where you could rake in 12 billion and give none back. Those days are behind us, the virus will kill all that. Your wealth is behind us and kindness is meant for the past. Our leaders would bind us and starve us and call it a fast. A sacrament meant for their God that they garnish in cash. And they feed it the poor by the hundreds, that's all that it asks. Its hunger is legion and people in need are all it will have. So our only chance is to starve it and hope that it turns on them. You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your hands. Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your hands.
Turn on some music now. People still owe money. People still owe money. No.
To me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home. Home. Right in the center where the haves meet. You were proud of incremental half speeds. You were getting down in the AOC dance line, hands tied, nodding to the backbeat. Your Secret Service dive in front of any representative alive, being asked for the very bare minimum. And you'll turn into that same kind of hard right villain you detested should we mention they could ever muster maximum. Cause liberal denial's such a lofty ataraxia, where morals take a back seat, not up in the cab, but in hidden panels made by federal human traffickers. If you trust the autopilot, then you're just a sleeping passenger, passively accepting that it isn't us the bastards serve, making peace with all the evil walking on this rancid earth, seeking unity with those who bound your hands at birth, glancing up at fascists on a bloody dais thinking they just need a push. Not a holy man, but I'm praying for a burning bush. Yeah, I know you'd love to look away, but love, you need to look. There are many massacres the country manufactured that will never make the books. Now here's your fucking hook.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home.
Home on the range of excuses. Justify some fracking, water down pollution, paint a fresh coat of bipartisan charm over backroom collusion. Your consent is being manufactured by illusions, marketing executives in federal seclusion, working day and night to keep you just the side of lucid, and too beat down for calling out abuses. So fuck all these progressives who can speak on revolution once they empty all your powder out and spit on all your fuses. I prefer to judge a leader not by quality of tweets, but the six-figure book deals she chooses, donors he betrays, and donors that he'd gladly take a bullet before he refuses, slogans he reuses, buzzwords he produces that he spews like mucus. Well, two can play at that. So here's the inner dialogue of every time I snap, and it's fine-tuned to ruthless, and saying politics are useless. Just a bunch of loose lips tweeting cute shit, power suits, taxpayer booze trips, bunker at the ready when the shoe flips, and there will be no news clips. There will just be
people still owe money. People still owe money. No.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home.
People still owe money. People still owe money.
Maybe that's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive. Kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contracts tossed and they're gone with the tide. And the heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip. Till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes. Because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards.
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
Why? The button don't work. Why do they never work? The Wednesday button.
Oh.
It's Wednesday, my dudes. I know what the matter is. It's okay. I fixed it. Perfect. Collin got it. What's up? It's I in the News. It's me, Reef, as always, with my co-host as always, Collin Radix-Carter, aka Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you? Yeah, it does. Woo!
I do that every week since I have that function on my computer or whatever. My voice cracked a bit.
Just going through puberty. You're fine.
I'm okay. I guess it's definitely winter here. Actually, it's been all over the place weather-wise here. So it was cold last week, and then it warmed up, and now it's mild. But I think it's gonna cool down a little bit. But I'm gonna be traveling next week. So, by the way, for the folks who do not know, we mentioned this last week, but to all those who do not know or are new, welcome. We love you. Thanks for joining us. But this will be our last live stream for the year. We are going to take a 2-week break. I'm going to be traveling for the next weekend. Well, next week, I'm going to be traveling for a week and a half. And I'm sure you do not want to do any streams.
I mean, whatever. I thought about doing some stuff if there's stories.
But I think either way will just give us some, I think, a break. Enjoy our families, enjoy ourselves, and then also behind the scenes we can plan, for things that just a lot of laundry list stuff that we've been wanting to do. That
do some housekeeping.
Yeah, that we can actually do without having to worry about producing an episode. And I'm sure, as kind of history has taught us, especially in the last couple of years and change, that I think I've done this show with you. Not to say that there's a whole lot that happens over this time of year, but it's kind of meh.
Slow. Yeah. I mean, if there's something that comes up, I might do something, but otherwise we'll try to find some stuff people missed, put together some rewind streams, or we'll figure out something.
We'll definitely have content, whether it be replays or maybe an interview. Possibly we've reached out a couple of people for interviews. They haven't gotten
I meant to
back
reach
us.
out to Husseini too. We got to do that. We got to add him to the list.
We can do that. Sure. But there will be content. It won't be live content, but we'll be back live on January 8th. So the week after New Year's, we'll be back live. But yeah. So
we read stories. We did that.
Yeah.
Let me get those set up. Here.
So while Reef pulls it up, thank you guys once again for joining us tonight. So this is what's on the docket tonight. So I was kind of inspired, as sometimes happens to me. I think in light of the Luigi Mangione case, I think, we had discussions last week, and we had discussions behind the scenes regarding universal healthcare, and especially within the last week or so with Mangione right now, and just how all of a sudden mainstream media is picking up the idea of universal healthcare again, which I've said this I guess I'm kind of mixed on it. While I'm happy that we're talking about it, but again, at this point, shouldn't be in the position of talking, should be in the position of action. Which is not going to happen either case, barring, again, a miracle. But that being said, this issue, as well, I'm sure for all of you, is important to me, as well as you, as well as basically everyone in the space we know. This is probably one of the big issues that I think hits us personally. And we definitely want some radical transformation in regards to how we treat people in terms of healthcare in this country. So I was listening to Savvy, and I've known this forever, but just how like healthcare is tied to race. We also can argue is tied to class as interchangeable terms, you know. But I think especially for me being a Black man living in this country, health hits me a little different given my mom is a nurse. Well, was a nurse. She's retired. So obviously, just hearing from her, like how wretched our universal healthcare is in this country, especially growing up in the UK. And then obviously with family health issues, both parents and myself, it's very much tied to how I navigate my life. So I was inspired by Savvy because I know she did a segment on this in relation to what mainstream media is talking about, but I wanted to kind of not flip it, but kind of go into the history a little bit. And I know you've been talking last night with you and Indy, you guys brought up some good points that I felt would be decent
useful
for
to
discussion at least.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about how health is somewhat connected. Well, the argument is the reason why we don't have healthcare, I'm going to keep it at basic level and then we'll unpack it later, is due to Black people, as the statement goes. So we're going to look into that a little bit in a few minutes. And then later on tonight, this was a story I think that went under the radar for obvious reasons, but I still think it is kind of important in terms of what we've been talking about Israel and Palestine and how countries are both like siding on whether they are going to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, but Israel's closing the Dublin embassy in Ireland because reasons you can probably take a guess as to why. So we'll go into that a little later in terms of why and break that down a little bit. And then you got a couple of stories in what I did see of them. One, I think in particular, I did kind of see that were interesting. So you want to share or summarize?
Yes, sir. So this went way under the radar, especially now that the Doge thing also made it through Congress, right? House of Reps, at least, right? But there's another thing that got through the House of Reps about anti-communist education bills, which you're wondering what that might entail. And pretty much they want to tell you communism's bad in school. So, just wrong history being forced down the entire nation's throat is great. So we'll get into that. And I brought a heartbreaking story from Caitlin Johnstone.
Yeah, I kind of read this, and it's awful. You probably should not have done this as the last story, to be honest with you.
There's a reason. Yes. So I want to make sure over the Christmas break that people don't forget that, terrors are happening, and definitely don't make your family forget. It's a time to make them aware,
right?
Especially when that little baby that everyone's supposed to be celebrating is from where? Where's that baby from again? Huh?
Palestine.
Exactly. So we'll talk about, little town of Bethlehem. Y'all know that shit? No. Okay. Y'all need to go back to Bible study, apparently. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into it, and we'll get into what the roller skates symbolize, and not gonna be fun, gonna be depressing, but we kind of got to. So strap in for that. But anyway,
well, I'll say this real quick. I think especially the last couple of weeks, especially we've been talking about this, but I think this is our last live stream of the year.
Yeah.
We're heading into 2025. We're heading into Trump era part dos.
Yep.
And obviously, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to pretend like Malcolm X type activists, especially online. I mean, we saw this in the last term. We're going to see it again. But I think the challenge now is, okay, if you're going to get involved, that's one thing. But are you going to keep that energy regardless of who is in power? It's a lot easier to.
I would tell you right.
Well,
Our people will, but
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like there have been people who have been at this, regardless of who, that when the Democrats are in power, you don't give a damn. But when the Republicans are in power, then you start caring.
Yep.
So it's the idea of like, and I heard like some delegate from Maryland spout bullshit, basically being like, oh, like now Trump is going to come into power. Like, where are the protests for Palestine now? And I'm like,
you'll
this
see.
is still happening. It's just that they're
Right.
being cracked down. Number
And
one.
you're not seeing
and number
them.
two, you weren't talking about it even when they were in mainstream media anyhow. So I don't know what exactly you were talking. I didn't see you mentioning anything regarding Palestine or anything like that. So fuck off. But regardless, I think really moving forward, that's kind of be, at least for me, what I'm going to be stating is, if you're going to have this energy for Trump, make sure you mean it regardless of once Trump is done. Because come 2029, he's not going to be in power anymore. More than I would guess, probably the Democrats will return to power, I guess.
Maybe.
And are you going to keep that same energy regarding all these issues that you care about? And we're going to get into the first one in a second. But, you know, that's a challenge that I think, especially in independent media, that we have to kind of, you know, really hammer down. And, you know, everybody's going to be like Trump, 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 Trump. But then it's going to be like, Trump in and of itself is not the issue. The issues are the issue. And so regardless of who's in office, are you really to really fight and do what you need to do? And we're not promoting anything that is going to get people unalived or whatever. That being said, there needs to be more strategic and a little more persistent ways of protesting, I'm going to say in that way, and that's the nicest way I can say it, to really push for a lot of these things that you want to see happen, rather than just tweeting about it online and think, oh, I'm doing my activism for the day or the week or whatever.
Yeah, I think you need to make pocketbooks afraid again, and there's some options for that are within the bounds of the law. So, you know, feel free to think about those while you're munching on cookies this year.
Right.
But anyway,
so
talking about this kind of stuff is why we're demonetized. You can't super chat us unless you scan that QR code, or go to co-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, or look in the little doobly-doo under there. Or if you're in the live chat, you put !donate. He'll give you a little link to the Ko-fis. You know, that's the way we super chat now. So you can super chat us. Isn't that nice? Some of these people already support us monetarily, and they're very nice people. Some, I assume, are great people. You can look through there. Your name's probably up there, but there's some other options down here. You can go to CashApp, PayPal, Patreon. Think about signing up monthly. We definitely could use some of that. But you ready for our first story? I'm ready.
See. Wait.
Back one.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So, first story tonight, we're going to talk about universal healthcare in a different way. We kind of want to wait. I know Mangione is, you know, obviously the big hot topic right now, especially given now his charges have been upgraded to first-degree murder and terrorism, which I'm like, you really want to go down that road? Okay. So, as I said last week, we want to wait. Not to say we won't talk about it, but unless it's something more substantive, rather than just more sensational, then we feel will be important. Then we will talk about it more specifically regarding the case.
Yeah.
But, but I did want to, not to say I wanted to bring this up. I was kind of inspired by talking about this, listening to Savvy the other night. I know she talked about how universal healthcare relates to race. And she used mainstream media to kind of make a point. So, which behind the scenes, not to say it was kind of contentious when we were playing this last night, but you and Indy had, I meant you, I mean, you had some
Thoughts?
valid arguments to be had regarding the article that I pulled, which was from mainstream media, but I think just overall the issue regarding universal healthcare. So we're going to do what we normally do is we're going to talk about it. I know you probably have some stuff you want to say about it. And if Indy's in the chat, feel free to add your 2 cents.
Yeah.
But I'm going to talk about this and talk about it from my perspective, given, as I said earlier, universal healthcare is definitely one of my top issues for me personally regarding my health, for my family's health, for those who live in this country, like my mom, who, my mom was a nurse. I've been very blessed to have a healthcare professional who kind of warned me about, you need to do this, you need to do that in order to kind of maintain your health. Because as the saying goes, health is wealth. Basically in terms of like being able to do the shit that you need to do and not having to worry about how that's going to affect your job and your families or whatever. But I also kind of see this in terms of my work, seeing children, who may be behind on immunizations that they need, who may not be able to see a doctor when they want to, or, a lot of healthcare issues that as a teacher, I kind of have to partner with families to kind of help address. So, but the argument is that universal healthcare, or the lack of it, is tied to race, or at least that's the saying, is that the reason why we don't have universal healthcare is because of Black people. I think it's a little more, it's not to say it's complex, it's a little more, there's a lot more to it than that.
I've never heard that being the reason, or anywhere close to. I mean, maybe that's your culture.
I have, right? I have, but as you and Indy were sharing yesterday, I think this issue is a lot, not nuanced, but it's multifaceted. In those in which I do believe is true, but this is a aspect, especially how it applies to me and to others like me, that I believe should be addressed. So, so we're going to talk about it from that aspect, and feel free to chime in to talk about yours, Reef. So I'm sure you will. So, so this article, after I got shot down from the first one,
which was the New York Times, just FYI.
Right. So this was from Street Roots. So I think this is a nonprofit. Close enough. It's written by Helen.
Yeah.
So she writes, so keep in mind, I guess this is an op-ed essentially. The Racist Foundation of American Healthcare Policy. So this article was written in 2020, by the way. But I think, so this was this was just before the pandemic. But given that we're going to have Trump 2.0 era again, a lot of things I think people were worried about then, people are going to be re-worried about within the next month or so, for sure. So I think it still kind of applies. So, but anyway, today it's Trump's ban on immigrants who need assistance, but medical injustice for people of color has roots 155 years deep. So she continues. On January 27th, the United States Supreme Court voted 5-1 to approve the Trump administration's public charge law, also known as the healthcare ban. News of the decision was largely buried in the flood of the dramatic impeachment headlines. The law has been fast-tracked and will go into effect February 24th. The aim is to refuse entry or deport those who are expected, and under the new rules, this can be a subjective, discretionary determination left up to individual immigration officers to receive any amount of food, health, or housing assistance. The new rules will radically expand the government's ability to define individuals with legal immigrant status as public charges, financially dependent on the government, and force deportations on that basis. Medicaid, cash assistance, food assistance, and public housing are all types of public benefits that can now cause a legal immigrant to be deemed a public charge and refuse entry or deported. Zoom out, please.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
According to Immigration Policy Institute, a nonpartisan research and analysis institute on international immigration and refugee trends, the new regulations will have dire implications on the citizen children of immigrants as a result of family separations. They are also likely to affect local economies in immigrant communities as grocery stores lose revenue from SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. There will be negative effects as well on clinics, hospitals, and publicly supported healthcare agencies due to rejection of healthcare coverage and increased reliance on emergency rooms by the insured.
Which, with that new DOGE Act that was passing, is very similar stuff. Sounds like,
right?
You know, benefit
Millions
cuts and all that stuff.
Yeah. Millions of vulnerable children may be affected as families, fearful of being deported, refuse food aid and healthcare benefits from SNAP and Medicaid. To make matters worse, it was the federal government that heavily encouraged enrollment in these and other federal aid programs in past years. The Migration Policy Institute estimates that more than 4 million legal immigrants who are not yet citizens receive Medicaid. Another 9.6 million live in families which a member, nearly always a U.S.-born child, is enrolled in Medicaid. And as expected and likely intended, the Trump administration's new rule disproportionately affects people of color.
Mm-hmm.
The history of who has access to federal dollars for healthcare in the U.S. and who doesn't has structural roots in the racism that has divided this country since the Civil War, roots that are playing out today in the highest court of the land. The current administration is taking steps that in many ways mirror the direction healthcare policy took 155 years ago, when America created the first federal system of medical care. A look back to that historic time may help make some sense of how racism is foundationally intertwined in our federal healthcare policy, and why we are the only high-income country in the world that does not provide universal healthcare, and why those who are white and wealthy are far more likely to remain healthy. The years immediately following the Civil War were rife with epidemics. Slavery had technically ended, but the South was in ruins. Smallpox, yellow fever, cholera, and starvation plagued the camps where freed African Americans sheltered in post-war limbo. Mortality rates were high as mounds of dead horses, the shallow graves of soldiers, hunger, and the lack of access to the most basic health care set the stage for a massive biological crisis. Historian Jim Downs explores this landmark period in American healthcare history in his book, Sick from Freedom.
Okay.
Freed Blacks sent urgent pleas for help, but white leaders were profoundly ambivalent about providing that help, Downs writes. They were worried the smallpox virus and other runaway plagues could affect their own community. They were also reluctant to offer free assistance because they believed it would lead to dependence. Hard work, they argued, was the best and only way to health and vitality for the emancipated. So, in other words, pull yourself up by your bootstraps in terms of your health.
But I mean, I feel like they did that at that time. They weren't giving federal assistance to anyone else either. You know?
No.
So, you know, and it was at the time where the Union especially didn't have a lot of resources. You know? So, like, I mean, polio, I felt like was a little different, but That was way later. So, but anyway,
in response to the dire conditions, rising mortality rates, and the real threat of viruses breaking into white communities, Congress finally set up a medical division for the Freedmen's Bureau. This was the nation's first federally funded healthcare program. Though half-hearted, only 120 doctors and 40 hospitals were provided for nearly 4 million freedmen, women, and children. It was a significant action. I spoke with Downs about the roots of our national healthcare ethos. Enslaved people became free in an environment plagued with disease and sickness, Downs said. We ignore that history. We want a triumphant motion of freedom and emancipation. But people of the time witnessed those forms of suffering, and in an unprecedented move decided to call upon the federal government to help. This is all before the creation of the welfare states, the creation of any type of relief effort from the government. It is a tragic history because of the high rates of mortality, sickness, and suffering, but it is a triumphant story in some way because the federal government acted in a way we have never seen it act before. I mean, I think he kind of downplayed it a little bit in terms of, like, you know, that's what government is supposed to do,
right?
You know, at its core. But they didn't want to do it because the blacks, though. But anyway, scroll down, please.
Yep.
The real motivation for providing healthcare had been to get formerly enslaved people healthy again for the agricultural labor force, where they were sorely missed. That motivation is still threaded into our present-day insurance practices as well. American national healthcare carries an implication about political economy, Downs explains. This is mirrored in our present-day practice of employers providing healthcare insurance. Zoom out.
Yep. I clicked the button, but it didn't go. There we go.
Why do employers provide health insurance, Downs asks? Not out of a benevolent concern. They're doing it to protect their workforce labor, to protect their investment.
Right.
The idea of federal aid was revolutionary, but the actual execution lacked teeth. The scant federal healthcare relief programs set up following the Civil War were quickly dismantled by the former slave states, which formed a voting bloc that wielded enormous political power. So remember, back then, these were Democrats, not
carpetbaggers and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. That bloc preserved the nation's racial stratification by securing local control of federal programs under a mantra of states' rights and, in some cases, by adding qualifications directly to federal laws with discriminatory intent. Janine Interflandy wrote in an article for the 1619 Project, a New York Times Magazine initiative exploring the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans. The pattern of racial discrimination in the American healthcare landscape became entrenched in the years to come. From the GI Bill, which essentially excluded Black service members and their families from benefits following World War II, to the American Medical Association, which barred Black doctors and supported restrictions on medical education for Black students, federal and state policies have continued to mirror patterns of racial disparity and inequality in healthcare. Fast forward to the new healthcare ban for illegal immigrants. Downs addresses the limbo of immigrants who, like freed African Americans, inhabit a quasi-realm where citizens' rights and human rights are ill-defined. In today's climate, medical rights are human rights is a weird formulation, but the question is, what does human rights mean? Downs told Street Roots. What they are trying to do is incorporate it as an argument of citizenship and responsibility of the state.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a weird formulation. Every other country seems to think it's fine. But,
right.
You know.
Downs sees the plight of children at the border as directly analogous to the experience of Blacks after the Civil War. An analogy of the Black refugee experience that no one is talking about is the experience of children at the border dying of flu. It's the same idea. It's not about citizenship, it's about occupying a political space, and therefore we don't have to respond. Why are the children kept at the border? Because they're waiting for their hearing. They are kept in a refuge situation, and as a result, they are in conditions leading to the outbreak of disease, and they are dying. There was a case in December of children dying of the flu. They had nothing but these aluminum sheets to place over them. As the country politically works out what will happen to people at the border, having that amorphous political space has immediate health ramifications. That's what happened after the Civil War. Black people didn't have citizenship after the Civil War. They were non-enslaved, but they were not considered citizens. They were in an amorphous political space, and that leads to medical consequences. If you are a human living in that amorphous state, you're more susceptible to disease, Down said. Street Roots spoke with Professor Evelyn Hammonds, former dean of Harvard College and a professor of science in the African American Studies at Harvard. She said she supported the historical arc laid out by Downs. The fact that we ended up with the fragmented, unequal health system that we have is directly related to institutional racism, she said. We've created a healthcare system as it was built over the end of the 19th century, and an increasing large hospital system across the US through the 20th century that is ridden with inequalities that represent the unequal distribution of healthcare. And certainly the question of who gets to demand that state, city, federal government provides for healthcare for all citizens is still a contested question. What most people don't recognize is the absolute way in which inequality and unequal distribution of health is built into the system. That is just structurally what people tend to miss out on as you look back over the long history. In the light of a new Trump policy, perhaps the Statue of Liberty should be rewritten to say, give me you're tired, you're poor, you huddled masses yearning to breathe free, but only if they have enough money on them to pay for the most expensive healthcare system in the world.
Most of them don't.
Right.
Because who can?
Right.
You know?
So I know this was last night you had some thoughts. So if you remember what
I feel like even with this article, which the other article I think gave more into the historical context, you know, it feels a lot of like it's like the cart before the horse, right? It's like I don't think the inequality is the like leading factor there. That's like the problem of the class factor, where the reason those things exist is because capitalism in the first place, you know, and because of, you know, how race is connected to class, right? There's a reason why you've been subjugated, right? And it's because since slavery, you haven't had the opportunities and the education and the monetary freedom, right? On top of labor was taken from you without monetary representation, right? Like all those things over years stack up to where, you know, it's like the same thing with crime rates, right? Like, and or, you know, any of those things where they talk about, you know, minorities being a majority in those things, right? But it's because of the economics, you know?
Right.
Whereas I think this is also because of the economics, and like they're unwilling to fix the economics because they're making too much fucking money off everyone, and they don't care if you die. And now, is there racism in the medical system? Absolutely.
Of course.
Like, I'm not going to deny that shit either, but you know, I think it's also, if your insurance comes up bad, they also don't care about you either. And the entire system is set up to not really care for you. It's to set up for profit.
I think the argument that some certain people are making is because, well, initially, because, you know, Black people were not considered human in this country, like for forever.
Yeah.
That argument, like, oh, because it was, they use your, and that's the idea of race. You have a visible, like, connotation of who you were. Like, as, now granted, you're white.
Yeah.
You're, like, I don't want to give your economic status, but, like,
yeah,
you know, but
middle
like,
class, lower middle class, generally.
So, like, but people will look at you
Yep.
may not necessarily assume who you are unless you tell them, or if they're able to figure out from context. From me, they can just look at me, oh, he's black, and immediately like things start popping off in their head, especially in this day and age. But I think the idea that, you know, at least with the segment that I watched from Saturday the other night, was because black people were considered subhuman in this country, and our government essentially didn't want to do anything for them directly, that indirectly affected other people, regardless of race, but also class as well. Like if you were a poor white person, it wasn't necessarily, or it still is not necessarily a guarantee that you are going to get any help either. And actually, in a lot of the things that was saying in the article, I can make the argument if you're poor white, well, during the Civil War, it basically was white and black. So like if you were a poor white person, you probably weren't going to get any of those services either. Especially like if you were an immigrant back then.
Well, and that's my thing too. It was like access to healthcare was being denied, not necessarily funded healthcare. It was like just getting a doctor who knew what they were doing, you know? Like, and I don't know if like that would have kept, you know, if white folk at the time were thinking about subsidized healthcare, that wouldn't have stopped them from getting it. They would have made some excuses and or a law that said you guys don't get it because yada, yada, yada. You know, they did that for plenty of other things. So it's kind of, to me, like, you know, while it's a factor, I would say the economics is like 90% of the issue, 95% of the issue, you know? But no one's willing to address those problems either. You know?
No, and I think thinking about this now, it's like it's still like, because I think this is in the realm of academia, especially with this article, that they benefit from capitalism as well.
Yes.
So
in a very similar system. Tell me access to education is because like subjugated black folk, and it's like, well, yes and no, no and yes, like all of the above, you know. So
but to bring it to like someone like Luigi, like in a moment, the reason why he's getting a lot of press, and I've noticed this is how they're flipping it, is because he is a rich guy that actually did it. Like he is from means. So the idea that a rich, essentially being in a way, allegedly a class traitor, in a sense of he was a rich guy, rich young man, or at least born into it, you know, had means, and still did something that you would think someone of a lower class would be more apt to do. So if that's kind of why he's getting a lot of talk right now, is because,
well, it's also why they're willing to throw the book at him too. See, this is my thing about the whole thing. Why they need a head on a spike and a patsy to begin with is because they need to manufacture the consent, which is why they are making it like terrorist charges, which then the precedent that would set would mean that anytime you targeted a individual for political means, that would be terrorism in their mind, you know? So and they could,
I mean, by that, because I
preempt
sent
you
a similar tweet this morning, basically being like, so it's okay for someone like Luigi to allegedly do what he did and be called a terrorist, but it's okay for like the cops to kill me, and I am no threat.
It's more than okay to be.
And then even with that, shout out to Jamie mentioned BB.
Uh-huh.
Like, what is he doing? Like,
go a couple countries.
And we've talked about, made this argument over the last year.
Yeah.
He's only doing this for political points, really, right now, and to protect himself. Like, what he's doing right now, as far as what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, That's all political. Well, economics.
Oh no,
but also political.
We've deemed it terrorism.
Right.
Like that whole pager thing was deemed terrorism.
Right.
So,
but
not only that, but in Syria, we now have Jalani, right, who we deemed an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Now, we'll just remove that from his, resume. It'll be fine. So, but this kid gets it because, okay. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I don't buy any of it. I almost don't buy that the dude's dead to begin with. Like they're more than willing to set up some narratives in this regard. So,
well, the other narrative that I saw was like, Brian Thompson came from a working class. That's kind of the shift that they're making. It's
Right.
like, he was working like a small town, like working class guy who moved his way up to the top of the ladder, and he was just a good guy, and it's kind of like this dude was being looked at for insider trading, which they don't mention.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say allegedly, but
I mean, it's at that level. At that level, all of the trading's insider.
So,
but
to kind of make that contrast, like, he was a working guy who worked his way up versus a rich, and like the intent, I think it's like a spoiled rich boy.
Yeah.
Who is privileged without a care in the world. But the argument, like even there, like assuming that he did have health issues, that was kind of like the equalizer for him, in terms of what he went through personally and how that affected his life and maybe affecting the lives of other people, or at least being able to witness that would allegedly lead him to doing something. But I think you're right. And like, again, I think in the realm of going back to what I was originally saying, academia benefits from having a capitalist take. It's easier to talk about race because that's the thing that you can sympathize
especially with Trump. Like, they make Trump into this big racist when really he's just a giant capitalist,
Right.
And the capitalism then makes him racist, So in practice, you know what I mean? Like that to me is the thing with a lot of this, especially from progressives. You'll hear every, phrased way to say that, it's because of like race and or gender and or, sexuality, but really changes to address that part. So, but anyway, you brought this bit.
Yeah. So this kind of goes along with what the article is saying. So this is kind of another op-ed piece from Now This.
Yeah.
But even what I forgot the name of this doctor. But even what he's saying here, in terms of the disproportionate way of how Black Americans are affected by healthcare, if you look at what he's saying, it affects other people of color and poor people too.
Right.
So, like it might be a little heightened within the Black community, but
yes,
it still applies to everyone else if you don't have the means if you don't have healthcare or have limited access to care. So you can play this whole thing. It's about 3 minutes. So
let me go ahead and do this for antis.
Compared to white Americans, Black Americans die prematurely from all types of diseases. George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Ahmaud Arbery. These have all become household names, but for all of the wrong reasons. Hearing about a Black man being shot by law enforcement in the United States has unfortunately become the norm. What cell phone cameras and surveillance footage fail to capture are the injustices spread out across all the various sectors of our society. As an emergency medicine physician, I practice in facts. And the fact is that compared to white Americans, Black Americans die prematurely from all types of diseases, including diabetes, hypertension, strokes, and of course COVID-19. A recent study by Cigna found higher rates of childhood obesity, cancer, diabetes, and heart disease amongst Blacks, linked to the lack of economic resources, limited access to care, delay in treatment, and lower health literacy rates. Even when all the variables like location, age, and economic status are accounted for, Black Americans die at a quicker and faster rate in our healthcare systems compared to white Americans. Black newborns die 250% more often than white Americans in our country. Black Americans between the ages of 18 and 49 are twice as likely to die from heart disease than whites. You have chest pain, you show up to the emergency department. Well, if you're black, you're going to be waiting longer for that life-saving initial EKG. Black men are 50% more likely to get prostate cancer and 200% more likely to die from that prostate cancer. These trends hold true for diabetes, hypertension, strokes, and so many other diseases across the spectrum. Many physicians have preconceived notions leading them to believe minority patients won't comply with medical recommendations such as incorporating exercise, and the biases extend to other minority groups like Asians and Hispanic Americans. Senator Cory Booker recently highlighted that black mothers are 3 times as likely to die from complications related to pregnancy compared to white mothers. Recently, Dr. Anthony Fauci was quoted as saying, "The COVID-19 pandemic has shined a bright light on how unacceptable the healthcare disparities are in our country. Conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, and asthma that tend to plague minority groups at a higher rate than other groups likely contribute to the higher COVID-19 death rate. Nationally, African American deaths from COVID-19 are nearly 2 times greater than what would be expected based on their share of the population. From physicians to police officers and politicians, we need to stop and reassess who we are as a country and who we want to be."
I mean, like he's right in terms of the black community experiences. And again, I know this personally. My dad is in remission for, well, prostate cancer.
Right.
That was bad, but like he's in but even now, like my dad has dealt with it now for over 30 years. So, you know, so that's definitely an issue that is personal to me as far as, you know, like a lot of the issues that he's saying. But again, the argument is it's not just limited to black people, you know, that
Yeah.
this is,
Well, and
if you
that's
are
my thing
poor
with this
or-
is like,
right.
well, with this, like everything that they mentioned in this video, all the fixes are economic fixes, right? That would help people across the board, you know? So, like, and Cory Booker ain't doing none of that. Definitely not now, but,
Right.
you
Funny how
know,
he's in that clip mentioning all of this,
yeah.
but he's not for universal health care. He
No.
might be for it if it's like in terms of for a profit motive, sure, but not in terms of like a holistic viewpoint of everyone has a right to health care, and as the government, we're going to make sure that everyone will have it, have the best quality care as possible, and that you're not charged an arm and a leg in order to get it. It
Right.
shouldn't matter who you are. You know, just on the idea that you exist, you have it. So, but yeah, I think, and what I was saying to you last night, I think, is the idea like, because you went off on me, you bring in that New York Times. I said, well, I think even in, if we are able, if you can find me an independent media source that kind of speaks of it in those terms,
but they
let me get it.
wouldn't,
and I think
because they would address the economic issue firsthand,
right.
you know?
But I think that's kind of what we're missing in independent media right now. And I think even, you know, people in our space is that we still tend to kind of go with the mainstream narrative, which is not always wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're not coupling that, and I think it's a lot easier to, you know, do things in like a format like this video or live stream, because it's a lot easier to kind of share your thoughts verbally and visually versus maybe writing them down.
Yeah.
But I think the idea still needs to be had. I mean, we talked about Danny Haifon's article from 2 years ago, I believe, with JB, you know, how capitalism equates to racism, you know, so like, so actually, if you want to watch it, you can go to our playlist and check it out. We did that almost 2 years ago from today. So, but I think moving forward, that's where we need to kind of talk about that, because it's very easy. Well, it's become political. It's become more politicized in terms of race. And that's where the both parties kind of fight at, is in terms of race. but they don't want to talk about it as far as economics, because that affects everybody.
Everybody.
You know, and
affects their bottom
they are the
line
ones
more
the
so.
government who benefits versus the people who do not. So they
Right.
want to avoid that issue. But yeah, any last words before?
No, I mean, I find that like, because I do think that is a factor in a lot of things, but I think it always when I look at it's like when you know, like that kid asking why. It's like when I ask why again, you know, it's like, well, why is it racist? Well, you know, it's like, well, it's because these factors and these factors and these factors, and it's like almost all those factors are economic, you know.
Right.
And it's like,
And
yes.
don't forget, the idea of race in of itself is a social construct based on what?
Yes.
Economics.
Right.
So I think that's what we need to kind of get at is, you know,
keep
race
in mind
is a visual marker, allegedly.
It was the slave trade.
Right.
It was the trade part that was the important factor. The Civil War was based off the economic factors, not the freedom fight, like not any of that. They didn't care about the morality. They cared about the economics.
Money.
Right. So, you know, which we're constantly fighting with. So,
but I think even in independent media, there's this lack of, I don't want to say, I think it's unfair to say lack, but I think we need to kind of hit that message a little harder in terms of it's about class. It's about class. It's, yes, race is a part of that, but even that is related to class too, because as I said, it's a visual marker of allegedly where you stand economically, which may or may not be correct. And
which the other factor with universal health care right now, and this has always kind of been a factor, but especially recently with how the Biden administration handled the COVID epidemic and the Trump administration handled the COVID epidemic, on top of lots of, you know, shady economic think tanks want control of healthcare for very unsavory reasons. This government and or a new government, it's like I'm a little amiss at giving them control of a universal healthcare system, you know, and any universal healthcare system that Congress would enact at the minute, or even in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have to keep an eye on that fucking fine print, because there's going to be a lot of problems in there. So, you know, just keep that in mind. So, like, that's just my 2 cents on it. And I have always been a big, giant supporter of single-payer healthcare systems, as well as a lot of other super commie idealistic things. You know, like, I'm here for UBI. I'm here for a lot of that crap. You know, because I know that the amount of wealth that we make as a populace, if shared among the populace, we can all be fashionably wealthy, right? Like, you know, if you just split up the GDP of the United States evenly, we're talking people getting millions and millions of dollars for themselves, all of us. So, you know, that's the way with the AI, the automation, all that stuff is, you got to pay attention to the economic stuff here. So, but, and until people are wanting to fight on those terms, it's going to be tough trying to get anything done. So, but keep in mind, it also took one guy with a plan to get everybody talking about stuff, you know, and I'm not saying do anything outside the law, but sometimes I think we need to make those pocketbooks more afraid than they are. So, you know, think about some inventive stuff, you know, but, you know, otherwise, good luck out there, fam. We're going to need it. So, but
which is why having these conversations is why we're demonetized from YouTube. So, if you want to support us, financially otherwise, please feel free to scan the QR code if you have a smartphone that you see on your screen, or you can go to the link that you see at the bottom there at ko-fi.com, and you can make a donation as little as $1. We know that this is the holiday time. Jesus, next week. So you're doing last licks of getting the things that you need for your families. And as we say all the time, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take care of your communities before you give to us. But if you have a couple extra bucks that you want to kind of donate to us, we would be more than happy and appreciative for that. As we said, because YouTube does not monetize us, we're not featured in the algorithm at all, even though we think that our stories are valued and important. So the only way that we're able to get any recognition in terms of what we're doing here is by viewers like you. So the way you can do that is, don't forget to like this stream, or like this clip once you see it after the stream, and be sure to subscribe to us so we're able to continue to grow. So maybe their algorithm is like, oh, they actually are doing good shit, to help fight the suppression on YouTube. And make sure you leave a comment. We do read them, even though I shouldn't say we do read them. And we do take note of what people are saying. And I think a lot of you have a lot to say over the last few months, so we really appreciate that. So it definitely helps formulate future stories as well as discussions that we like to have live, and help us get to 3K. Hopefully we'll hit that in the first half of 2025, but as a way to continue growing and supporting our colleagues in the network as well as independent media. And thank you for watching. We love you.
All right. Before we get to that, we can check the chat. Speaking of algorithms, I noticed that like our Syria clip last week had like something like 7 views, which like most of our clips have been getting like 20, 30, 40 recently. And it's like,
which for us, just as again, BTS, that's for a clip, considering that we get on average around 150 people who view a live stream of ours, getting around 30 views.
Yeah.
For the most part is pretty typical for us. Obviously, we want to have more people watch it, but those are typical. But yeah, I did notice that too. Like, those were not getting any. Well, I think that's the thing. We don't do stories, or at least I like to think so. We don't do stories that, not to say everyone else is doing, sometimes it's necessary, but at the same time, I think you and I have kind of talked about the idea of like, do stories that you are passionate about, do stories that are unique and not everybody is necessarily doing, because just because one person is doing it, and we respect everyone in the space. If you're going to do your stories, they have a right to do it. It's their own shows. But it may not work for us to kind of do it in a way that we do it. So I think for me, and I think that's the biggest thing I've kind of been thinking about over the last few months is, I think, just being authentic in terms of what we do cover, like not necessarily doing it because in the hope that the algorithm will pick it up. Like, I mean, sometimes I will admit, I do think that sometimes, but more often than not, it's the idea of like, what stories do I resonate with? What stories do I think is important for people to share or at least learn about? And you know this because I say this to you almost every week. Like, sometimes I struggle because it's like I see a lot of the stories, I'm just like, I don't want to talk about this. Everyone else is talking about it, or I don't really resonate with this story at all. I don't feel like really inspired to do it. So I feel like people do appreciate that from us, that we're not going into that mind meld of algorithm and popular and trending, so to speak, always. But I think the downside of it is that, YouTube especially does not view us as marketable. So
Yeah.
it's not going to, they're not helping us in elevating our network. Like, that's why, again, we say you guys are doing that and we take more value in that you guys are valuing us versus the AI that is on YouTube.
Yep. I just wanted to say that because it was like, compared to our other things this week, even, it was like way down. Like all of our Luigi stories are doing well, but the serious stuff is like heavily like deboosted, you know? Right. So it was just like, oh, so clearly distractions are things and we can look at them directly, like based off the numbers. So, right. But anything in chats you wanted to highlight?
I'm looking right now.
Let me go check Rumble. We are on other platforms. You're welcome to go find links to our Rumble in the description below. You know, leave some chats over there. YouTube is not always kind to us, but Rumble tends to let us do a lot more things, so that's nice.
Global Solidarity said people are realizing the corporations on the planet and are speaking up. Too late, but whatever. I mean,
yeah,
I would almost say better late than never, but you know, but be prepared for backlash, and they're already starting. You know, but I would argue they've been doing it, but I think they're going to really lay down the hammer. I think now, especially with Trump. So, and I think moving forward, as I keep saying, we have to talk about alternate ways to actually protest and make our voices heard. They don't care that we protest. They don't give a shit, and it doesn't. Right. It doesn't have the same effect as it once did, like in the 60s. So,
no, generally,
anything,
like
they will join us in the protest and be like, "Yes, we support you," and all that kind of stuff, and still won't do shit.
I have seen literally people in our space celebrate being patted on the head by the politicians after protests, being like, "Good job, you did well," and then those politicians did nothing. They didn't even promise you stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, ugh. But anyway, Global Solidarity also earlier, the word reefer is believed to innocently derive from the Mexican slang word grifa or the sailor slang reefer, referring to the person who rolls up the sails by, you know, reefing on them. You reef them. I know it's weird, right? Weird way to say that.
Teal Orca, this is kind of personal, asks if I'm a Virgo. No, I'm not a Virgo.
Birthday racism. Don't do none of that birthday racism in my chats. Don't you do it. Y'all are not going to be birthday racists. Don't get that nonsense out of here.
If you guys really want to know, I am Taurus, Sun, Cancer, Rising, Sag, Rising, Sag, Moon.
Okay.
However you interpret that.
That's your birthday race. That's nice.
That's my astrological leanings.
You share that with
my
like
chart. So.
You share that with Mussolini or what? You know? Like but anyway, let's get to our last one. Not our last one, next one. All right. So I saw this go way undercovered. Not many people in the space, I think, picked up on it. Luckily, we have people like Alan McLeod, who is going to give us the info. But Congress revives Cold War tactics with new anti-communism school curriculum. Care Bear, as an educator, you might want to know about this one. So, yeah. So, Congress has just passed a new bill that will see the U.S. spend huge sums of money redesigning much of the public school system around the ideology of anti-communism. The crucial Communism Teaching Act is now being read in the Senate, where it is all but certain to pass. The move comes amid it's already done the House, right? The move comes amid growing public anger at the economic system and increased public support for socialism. Funny how that works when killings of CEOs distract from this kind of stuff, you know? The Crucial Communism Teaching Act, in its own words, is designed to teach children that, quote, certain political ideologies, including communism and totalitarianism, which they're automatically equating, right, conflict with the principles of freedom and democracy that are essential to the founding of the United States. I think there was a lot more blood being essential to the founding of the United States.
Conflicts of our money.
Yes.
Conflicts of our profit.
Yes. Profit.
Motive.
Profit. The rules of acquisition. Yes.
Yeah, you can see freedom and democracy all you want, but that's what you really mean.
Yes. Profit and blood. That's what we run on. So I thought I'd do some digging as well, right? This is sponsored by Rep Salazar Maria Elvira, right? Nothing like Florida 27 to fucking fuck everyone over. Good for Florida. I apologize for my people. They know not what they do. That one knows. But so the purposes of this act are the following: to help families, civic institutions, local communities, local educational agencies, high schools, and state educational agencies to prepare high school students to be critically responsible and knowledgeable adults. That's what it seeks to do. 2, to ensure that high school students in the United States, A, learn that communism has led to the deaths of over 100 million victims worldwide. What about the fucking... Where's my button?
Capitalism.
What about that shit, huh? What about the fucking victims of...
Capitalism.
Huh? What about them? Understand the dangers of communism and similar political ideologies, and understand that 1,500,000,000 people still suffer under communism. Okay. Where?
So this, you reported on this story.
Yeah.
It had to be at least over a year.
Yep.
Where I think it was with you that you mentioned, like in Massachusetts where I used to live, there was, I think it was on a standardized exam there. And I was familiar, this was really hitting hard because it was a high school where in one of the communities I worked in that I knew of this high school very well. So, but the girl, I think, had it like on her exam, like I believe in like her history class, had questions that related to this kind of like in terms of more or less anti-communism things. And I want to say in this way, as the kids will say, she was woke as hell. So she was able to kind of swerve that and basically give the woke answers in terms of, you know, well, capitalism is this, and this.
Yep.
And I think it got to the point where I think, you know, it got reported on, I think, in the news. So I think she was speaking. I don't remember the clip. I remember having this conversation with you about this. So
I don't, but I smoke a lot of weed, so
I feel like it was with you. I feel like it was with you.
Might have been.
I think this was like at like when we started the show. But point is, like, this is why I want to leave teaching. Because it's a form of manufacturing consent in terms of having you think about communism. And you're right, this is kind of like Cold War tactics, which by association, probably not in the same way anymore. Things of terms of, I think mostly like Cuba at this point, you know, honestly. Like not necessarily Russia anymore, because Russia was kind of like the boogeyman back in the day. But like thinking about countries like Cuba, still is, but I think kind of low-key Russia, China, Cuba, like like formerly socialist, communist, or would argue kind of communist leaning countries where, you know, it's kind of like the, oh, that's bad. You know, there's no choice really, you know, where, as we keep saying, like, look, if you're going to do this, you got to do it right. You have to give pros and cons to both. Like, if you're going to give, I'm hearing all the, like, if you're going to give all the cons of communism, you need to give the pros.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, if you're going to, like, hype up capitalism, you need to give the cons as well, especially for people of color who are subjected to issues in the West.
Yep.
That's not necessarily going to fly, you know, but we're kind of seeing this already, like, especially in the South, of being like, oh, slavery was termed of, like, how they're phrasing it now is like internships, that kind of bullshit. And it's like, no, like, so the fact that, like, yeah, it was a Republican, obviously, who brought up this bill, but the idea that it passed the Senate, that means Democrats voted for that shit too. So they low-key support this idea because, again, it ties to money. It ties to their donors who do not want their population to be aware of the fact that they're being exploited at the end of the day. So
That's where we share a brain.
You can't have so many Luigi Mangionis that will threaten, so to speak, that will threaten the system in that way, and that will threaten their bottom line. So,
well, read those numbers for the people, right?
Right.
This is who voted for this. We got what? 156 Democrats vote yay. 171 Republicans. Seems like, you know, it's a big club and we ain't in it, huh? So let's look at some of the specifics, right? Who do you think voted for this? Well, it's pretty obvious. Jeffries, Pelosi, Watchman Schultz, just a few. Okay. I picked a few. There was, again, how many? 156. So I was not going to subjugate people to all the yays, right? But I found some of these a little more telling, right? These are the ones that, A, know that this bill is bullshit, but B...
But couldn't make a stand. Do you have who did?
Yes, yes. So, let's look at the not votings. We got Massey, right? I know a bunch of people been super happy about him and his antics recently. Well, turns out, you know, he might not be on the up and up, you know, on everything. Right. So this to me is to tell your donors, hey, don't worry about it. I won't get in the way. That's what the not votings to me mean, right? Bowman, not voted. Right? Okay. Frost, not voting.
Maxwell.
Yes. Right? So that's the ones that I feel like at least want to show their donors that they're not in the way. Right?
Right.
So some of the no's got Boobert here on a nay. Right?
Nay.
MTG from Georgia, right? Nay. Right? Jayapal, nay. AOC, nay. Omar, nay. Talib, nay.
Okay,
right?
So at least on the issue,
yeah, they
squad members,
they have to, someone's got to be opposition, you know?
Right.
So,
but it was okay for them, again, but it's okay for them to do that because it's not going to, in this case, it's not going to affect them to say no.
Exactly.
So when it counts, when we want them to count for something, so yeah, like this is just more of a symbolic thing, if anything else.
Yep.
You know? So
yeah, this is just to keep up appearances.
We want them to do for things that actually count. That's when they don't do it.
Which is why I feel like these
going to get majority votes anyway.
Right. The not voting
by this point, you know, like by this point, like it was Republican led, like given that this, you know, this was, I guess,
Salazar or whatever
in the last year or so. It really wouldn't matter given it's Republican control. So again, like
you should have been able to vote no on this easy. Should have been an easy
at
nay
least
vote for
Bowman
you.
should have voted no. Well, should have said no.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised in the way of Matthew, even Frost, because they're corporate. Well, Frost more so corporate shell.
Wasn't Bowman education?
Bowman as a
right.
teacher.
Okay, yeah. I remember.
Know better.
Right?
So
you'd think, but no, that's to me, these not votings, when a majority was already there, the fuck you do it.
Right.
You know? So anyway, to continue, we'll get into some details of what this actually fucking does. The crucial Communism Teaching Act, in its own words, is designed to teach children that certain political ideologies, including communism and totalitarianism, conflict with the principles of freedom and democracy that are essential to the founding of the United States. Although sponsored by Republicans, it enjoys widespread support from Democrats and is focused on, guess what? China, Venezuela, Cuba, and other targets of U.S. empire. These two in particular. Please keep your eyes on these two coming up, especially this one, right? Article in Mint Press now about Trump's views on Venezuela and how that might play out in the next term. So keep your eyes out. But the wording in the bill has many worried that this will be a centerpiece of a new era of anti-communist hysteria similar to previous McCarthyist periods, which we're definitely in one. The curriculum will be designed by the controversial Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation and will ensure all American high school students understand the dangers of communism and similar political ideologies, and learn that communism has led to the deaths over 100 gazillion victims worldwide. It will also develop a series titled Portraits in Patriotism that will expose students to individuals who are victims of the political ideologies. Okay, so I'm sure they'll throw Navalny in. Why not? So, you know, the 100 million figure originates with the notorious pseudoscience text, The Black Book of Communism. Why's it gotta be black? Huh? Yo, fuckers. A collective of political essays, the book's central claim is that 100 million people have perished as the result of communist ideology. However, even many of its contributors and co-writers have distanced themselves from it, claiming that the lead author was obsessed with reaching the 100 million figure, to the point that he simply conjured millions of deaths from nowhere. And that's people who were wanting to help write this. Even they're like,
God.
So its methodology was also universally panned, with many pointing out that the tens of millions of Soviet Nazi losses during World War II were attributed to communist ideology. This means that both Adolf Hitler himself and many of his victims are counted towards the vastly overinflated figure. Collin, they put all the Nazis the fucking Soviets killed in this. That's what they put. Those were victims, apparently. Sound fucking familiar? Does this sound familiar to anybody? No? Just fucking me? Okay. The book was condemned by Holocaust remembrance groups as whitewashing and even lionizing genocidal fascist groups as anti-communist heroes. Oh, God. Anyway, it gets worse. The principal organization promoting the 100 million figure today is the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which has shown a similar level of both anti-communist devotion and methodological rigor. The group, set up by the U.S. government in 1993, hi, that's my birth year, how you doing, added all worldwide COVID-19 deaths to the Victims of Communism. Remember, they threw COVID-19 deaths in here.
Oh, God.
Arguing that coronavirus was a communist plot because it originated in China. These people who will be designing the new curriculum that will be taught in social studies, government, history, and economic classes across the country. As long as it doesn't touch my home ec classes, all right? Those are important.
Did you have home ec?
I didn't. I missed out on that. So we didn't have any. By the time I was going through high school, like shop and home ec and all that stuff was gone. So unfortunate, right. I know. We had a vocational school right next door, so like they did have there was a cooking class that I know some of my friends were taking, and like auto body and shop were over there as like dual stuff. But anyway, one of the central goals of this bill is also to ensure that high school students in the United States understand that 1,500,000,000 people still suffer under communism. This is a clear reference to China, a rapidly developing country that in just 2 generations has gone from one of the poorest on earth to a global superpower, challenging and even surpassing the United States on many quality of life indicators. The bill goes on to detail how the school curriculum, okay, here's the kicker, pay attention everyone, focus on ongoing human rights abuses by such regimes such as the treatment of Uyghurs in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region by the Chinese regime and its aggression towards pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong and Taiwan, who it labels a democratic friend of the United States. You hear that? Y'all listening over in the Green Party? Y'all hear that shit? Huh? That's what y'all are complicit in now. Y'all push these bullshit narratives, and this is what you fucking get. So, fuck you, Butch. Anyway. Thoughts so far?
This is why I hated high school history.
Uh-huh.
I knew there was a world history when I took that my freshman year, I loved it. But then when we got to American, U.S. history, I hated it. And I had at least my sophomore year AP, which I really couldn't stand. But again, it's like, look, as I said earlier, if you're going to do that, you got to be fair. You got to do pros and cons to all of it and have that discussion. That I think would be worthwhile having. But again, you can't radicalize these kids too much. No, actually, I'll take that back. You can't radicalize these kids at all.
Right.
Because, again, it affects profits. They want these kids to be able to go into these industries, to be their robots, and not think about, the implications of what this means as far as the macroverse that is our world and how it plays into, the exploitation of other people who they want to kind of take over. China, Russia, like Cuba is basically China, locked out right now. Venezuela, they also want to lock out right now. Generally, the global South, they want to, well, I wouldn't say lock out, but they want to continue to exploit their resources to benefit of our wealth, and to be damned that if enough people, especially within Gen Z, becomes more aware of that and actually make some noise about it. To hell with that. So we would rather just socially condition these kids to think this way and not critically think about this. But I say that, and I don't think that's going to work necessarily, only because with the internet, and well, TikTok may not be a thing by next month, but there's enough information to be had on the internet alone that, and I think at this point, people in this country, especially the youth, are beginning to put 2 and 2 together on their own, even without the brainwashing really that is becoming more rampant in this country right now. And so you can do it all you want, but I don't think at this point it's really going to be as effective as they think it's going to be, given how much more savvy children are and how much information that they're able to get easily. And then you're going to go into censorship, like, which this is a form of censorship.
Oh, it's more than that. This is
right.
Programming. This is exactly what they talk about communism doing, you know,
Right.
like propaganda and all that. That's exactly what this is. Look, so they
Which
added this.
ironically is what they will probably teach in school anyway.
Yeah.
But it's the very thing that they're using to.
Now they're making sure of it, that's what's happening.
Right.
Right. So look
Right.
here at this clause B is the curriculum shall be updated periodically to ensure the curriculum includes both past and present communist and totalitarian regimes. Right. So they want carte blanche later to say whatever they want to say to the children. Right.
Right.
So
I noticed they didn't say anything regarding Palestine.
no,
But I'm sure that would be next.
No, none
I'm
of the
sure that
victims
would be
of
next.
capitalist regimes are going to be in here. None of that. Why would they ever do such a thing? Just the Uyghurs, the fake bullshit Uyghur story that, you know, plenty of fucking idiots are willing to push because they know someone who told them. You know, so even though there's been no signs of that. Also, feel free to talk to anybody who actually lived through some of those Soviet communist regimes and go ask them how they feel about it. Because there's videos online, you can look them up. May not be what you think. If anything, they don't like the new Russian capitalism. They want to go back. So, I literally watched one the other day where an old, like, 90-year-old grandma's like, people sometimes too rich. Too rich now. So much riches, you can't fathom how rich they are. And I'm like, yeah, base babushka. I love it. So yeah, this is bad, and I feel bad for people who bought into that bullshit. But anyway, so, and the portraits and patriotism is just gonna be hilarious. It'll just be a ton of like CIA agents practically, I'm sure.
Right.
But anyway, furthermore, many of the victims of Communism's Memorial Foundation's Witness Project case studies, likely the source for the Portraits and Patriotism series, are from
China.
That includes Russian Abbas, the founder and executive director of the Campaign for Uyghurs, a pressure group funded by, what did I say a minute ago? CIA front organization, the National Endowment for Democracy. Yay, the NED. Everyone's favorite CIA cutout. Abbas was also previously employed as a translator at the notorious Guantanamo Bay torture camp. That's their patriot that they're gonna push on everyone. So, the U.S. is currently engaged in a quickly escalating Cold War against China that includes channeling money and support to separatist movements, including those in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. As Mint Press News has reported in September, the House of Representatives passed a bill that authorized how much? $1.6 billion to be spent on anti-Chinese messaging worldwide. So, but yet, you know, we don't interfere in any other countries. So, you know, the other major target of the bill will likely be socialist or communist-led governments in Latin America. The act's sponsor is Maria Elvira Salazar, a Republican congressperson representing Miami, a part of Florida's famously conservative Cuban-American community. In 2023, she introduced the Force Act, which attempted to block any U.S. president from normalizing relations with Cuba unless its government is overthrown. She has repeatedly condemned Biden for easing the illegal U.S. sanctions on Venezuela, and in July she denounced what she described as the socialist curse in Central America and the Caribbean, singling out Cuban, Venezuelan, Honduras, and Nicaraguan as countries requiring, you heard it, regime change. Sounds like Hillary Clinton to me, but what do I know? Apparently a Republican from Miami. And all those fucking Cubans, I'm looking at you. I know you, right? I go look at where your family actually came from in Cuba. How do you think they got kicked out, huh? Y'all want to really look into things? What, y'all think y'all were just some nice little farm workers that got thrown out? Someone might have owned some plantations, is all I'm saying. She is, however, an avid supporter of the far-right president of Argentina, Javier Milei, accepting his invitation to attend his inauguration. Argentina, she said, you remember that country that a lot of Nazis fled to, that one, is going to set the course and point of reference for the rest of Latin America as to the way that a country should be governed. And it's looking real great over there. Just ask them. Free market economy, small government, individual liberties, freedom, private sector, no corruption. That's what we're trying to do. Perhaps the only foreign country she praises more than Argentina is, ding, 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 Israel, whose actions she has supported at every step, even going so far as to denounce what she called the one-sided pressure for a ceasefire in Gaza. Salazar's bill passed easily, 327 to 62, with limited opposition from Democrats or Republicans who voted for and against in roughly equal measures. Even many members of the Progressive Caucus voted in favor, proving that anti-communism is as popular on the left as it is on the right. The imminent passing of the crucial Communism Teaching Act harkens back to early anti-communist periods in American history, namely the Red Scare of the 1910s and the McCarthyist era of the 1940s and 1950s. During those times, organized labor movements were ruthlessly attacked. Workers from all professions, including professors, government officials, and teachers, were fired en masse. Sounds familiar? And some of the America's brightest minds had their careers derailed due to their political leanings. This included singer Paul Robeson, actors like Charlie Chaplin and Marilyn Monroe, playwright Arthur Miller, and scientist Albert Einstein, to name a few. The point of these operations was to break any opposition to the power of the state and big business and ensure that the United States maintained its capitalist course. Today, however, fewer Americans than ever are happy with the current political and economic system. A recent Gallup study found that only 22% of the public are satisfied with how things are going, with a majority responding that they are very dissatisfied and that 22% are fucking idiots. Living standards have been stagnating or dropping for decades, and alternative economic systems becoming more desirable. A 2019 poll from Axios found that 48% of adults under 35 prefer socialism to capitalism, including 57% of female respondents. Y'all ladies know what's up, huh? Nice to meet you. There are some signs that Washington is slowly moving towards a new McCarthyist era. President Trump, for example, has promised to carry out mass deportations of leftists once he becomes president, stating, I will order my government to deny entry to all communists and all Marxists. Those who come to join our country must love our country. We don't want them if they want to destroy our country. So we're going to be keeping foreign Christian-hating communists, socialists, and Marxists out of America. People tell me they're the worst people. At the end of the day, either the communists destroy America or we destroy the communists, he explained. But he also stated that American citizens espousing anti-capitalist views would be purged. So, if I don't know, any groups you might know decided that, Trump's, MAGA base and communism were going to be, a thing you could stick together, maybe y'all were fucking dumb, huh? No? Okay, just me? My question is, what are we going to do with the ones that are already here, that grew up here? I think we have to pass a new law for them, he said. That Trump would actually deport millions of American citizens en masse appears like too drastic a step right now, but it is clear that both Democrats and Republicans are serious in their anti-communist convictions. Therefore, the crucial Communism Teaching Act will likely only be the start of this campaign. Thoughts, Care Bear?
What more do I need to say other than what I said already?
I don't know. It's just I haven't heard anyone else talk about this. It's been what? How long now? This has been out?
I have no
Like
idea. How long has this been out?
I'll go look at the article. I think it's December 13th. This article was out. So
It's been out for a few days. But
yeah.
But again, I think, well, again, it's the idea of, it's not to say I hate saying this, but I think it kind of highlights what I said in the last segment, that we, even in independent media, tend to be distracted by the mainstream stuff and not kind of focus on the stuff like this that actually would be important in terms of educating and kind of informing. This affects us because
affects everybody.
Well, assumingly, but because we wouldn't be able to, like, YouTube would, well, still can, probably could, but this idea of this segment actually, or more or less, even reporting on this would be bad. And again, especially with Trump, who, at least with Democrats, that kind of both sides, you'll be like, oh, we're against that shit, but then they'll do some more sneaky stuff. Trump will actually kind of be out there and be like, I oppose the shit, and I will, fuck free speech, fuck censorship, I'm gonna do it. And there's gonna be big noise about that. But ultimately, this will affect how things are taught, which, again, this is one of the reasons why I want to leave the field, because you're the idea, especially if you're teaching history, there's always multiple sides to a story. And I think, just as far in speaking in equitable terms, you have to hear, even if you don't agree, it's good practice to hear the perspectives of everyone who is involved, and either try and make a decision out of that, or try to find the middle ground in that, if it's not necessarily obvious. That's what, in my mind, as a teacher, you should be, especially if you're teaching anything regarding the humanities, of how you should be presenting things. And I think, though, it's a lot, not to say easier, I think there's just been a lot of noise, again, going off from the last segment regarding race, that people are going to be somewhat more sensitive to. But now it's kind of coming into more political ideology. And again, when even in our education system there is a profit motive, right? It's not going to help. And I'm right now, in my mind, I'm thinking colleges, because they're run like a business. So it's not going to help. Well, right now, I'll make the argument, it's student loans and all that kind of stuff, and we've talked about this, that it's not incentivizing high school students who realize, oh, I'm low or middle class. The idea of getting a scholarship would be next to none. I don't have the money necessarily to afford this tuition, and I don't want to go in debt in order to get it.
Right.
So what are my alternatives here? And I think people might believe, or at least the elites might believe, that, oh, well, the reality is, in order to have education, in fact, a lot of jobs are tied to you getting a college education. So they think that, oh, that's going to push teenagers into getting college. And we're seeing now that's not necessarily the case, especially if you can get stuff on YouTube. Now, I say this, I don't necessarily, I'm kind of mixed on this, but I've been very transparent on this. the reality is, unfortunately, given our state of the world, you need a college degree for most.
Well, it's what a high school degree was like. Okay,
Right.
in the 50s.
You do need it. But even in that, I say, like, if you're able to go to community college first and then, but I say, like, know what you're getting yourself into if you are going to go to college. Like, know that you're going to be in debt. Like, and try and figure out a plan of how you can pay it off as soon as possible. If you do all of that, then fine. But don't go into the attitude of, like I did, like, oh, like, once I go to college and get a job, I should be able to pay those loans fine. Don't think that way. Like, think in terms of the industry, how much it's going to cost. If it's economically makes sense for you to take that, knowing like what the cost of that industry is, like, will you be paid enough to be able to pay off that debt within a decade? And if not, you might need to evaluate. Or if you don't care, then go ham. But it's still the idea of having people, well, students, be aware of the reality of how capitalism is completely fucked and how it is fucking other countries that, again, I don't think it's going to work in as well as they think it's going to. Because there's so much stuff on the internet already that people can see.
Well,
and not only that,
that's
like,
the thing is you see them
Right.
already trying to like control TikTok
Especially if you're coming from memes, like, you're able to travel and see how people live. Like, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to travel just a little bit, relatively, but still able to see enough where I'm just kind of like, this country is shit. Really?
Yep.
So, again, I don't think it's going to work well, especially among people who have the means to get the information or at least go abroad or whatever and see different ways of running the show in different countries and then being able to be like, well, why aren't we doing this here? Like, I don't think it's going to be good, but what do I know?
No, this is going to be bad, and the ramifications of it, like, they could also decide to expand this. It makes it easier to do that. So, keep an eye on things, especially after that passes. How that actually, if it passes, and you could theoretically call your senators, at the minute and tell them to not. So that's an option. But it sounds like Republicans are throwing a ton of bills through the House right now. This being one of them, right? Like, so we'll see how that works out. I'm sure there's going to be more to come. So be on P's and Q's, everybody. But anyway, talking about this is why we're demonetized. So you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen or go in that description below and give us a little $1 due. We appreciate it. But if you can't get it, just like and subscribe, hit the share button, and let us know what you think. How do you, especially if you're a teacher, how is this going to affect you? Get in that comment section. But otherwise, thanks for watching. All right, Care Bear, to the chats.
Yeah. There are a few that I saw. Like, Natalie in the chat was bringing the heat. She said a lot. Let me pull up some of what she said if I can get them all.
Yeah.
She said, the first one I see, the real danger is giving too few the power over the many, period. Yep. She continues, the ism doesn't matter. Human frailty and illogical ideology coupled with abuse by the ambitious is why we're always so fucked. There's more from her. Oh, history in public school was awful, derivative, and without context or human interest, just battles in the same. I didn't learn to love history until I branched out on my own. And I think, that's going to be the problem. If people are going to be disengaged with the content that you're trying to spew in terms of a school curriculum, they're going to find out another way. And probably in the way that I think in certain ways might be beneficial for them, especially as I said, once you get out in the world and start traveling and start seeing how different people live and just living an experience that is more tied to the human condition, then you start going to put 2 and 2 together on your own and you're going to be like, well, why in the fuck didn't they teach me this in school? That's why they didn't teach you that in school. So that's exactly actually what happened to me in a lot of ways, just even post-college. Like, me too. Like, I learned so much from honestly, I've learned so much from history actually doing this show, after doing the research, like in a much more effective way probably than when I learned. Now, granted, but I think a lot of the things that I think I did learn in school, but then kind of tying into being in the space, I was able to kind of look at the bullshit a lot more. Like, it was easier to see the bullshit.
Well, looks like we got ourselves a reader.
I wouldn't even say necessarily reading, but just listening to people. But again, like living an experience that was counter to what I was taught what would happen if I did the right thing. If I went to the right college, if I got the right job, then the idea was if you do those things, you're all set. And that's not the case, I would argue, for 90% of people, in this country.
The Accord Lord only MTG I respect is Magic the Gathering. Cool. Oh, that's the one with Blue Eyes White Dragon, right?
No, that's Yu-Gi-Oh.
I'm trying to make them upset. I do know that.
You're more of a nerd in that way than I am, and even
hell yeah, dude. Just keep an eye on that mint Black Lotus for me. I'll take one, thank you. But anyway,
Nally said, "I wish I could have traveled." You know what? I don't even think you necessarily have to in this day and age. I think again, internet, you're able to see a lot more. I think it does help if you're able to be on the ground and talk to people directly, that you're able to get that perspective. I think that is helpful. But
yeah,
I would argue even with like now how so connected we are, you don't even necessarily need to travel. Though I would just say, generally, if you're able to, if you have the means to do it, just at minimum, just get the fuck out of this country, like for a couple of seconds. But yeah, but I argue that not even is not necessary in the same way anymore.
Yeah. I saw someone said anti-communist, like what, Russia 2.0. But yeah, I mean, that's gonna be bad. Natalie, our history in public school was Oswald, derivative, and without context or human interest. Just
read that already.
Battle.
Read
Okay.
that already.
God, well, fine. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yep. So speaking of underreported stories, here's the second one. Which I'm kind of surprised, but not really. But you reading the title of this, you guys are smart. You probably know why this is the case. So Israel is being a bitch because they don't like to get their feelings hurt that they're closing the Dublin embassy. So I know you guys are like visuals as I do. So we're going to play a video clip just to kind of talk about this a little more and then go into an article that kind of gets this more in depth, and then we'll chat. So let's check out this clip. And
User.
We'll get into it more.
Israel's foreign minister has announced that Israel will shut down its embassy in Ireland. Gideon Saar put out a statement on the 15th of December saying Ireland had crossed every red line. The immediate trigger seems to be Ireland's decision to file an intervention to support South Africa's case in the International Court of Justice. South Africa has accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. Israel has strongly refuted the allegations. In his statement, Saar accused Ireland of double standards and anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Yes, yes.
Statement, quote, the actions, double standards and anti-Semitic rhetoric of the Irish government against Israel are rooted in efforts to delegitimize and demonize the Jewish state. The Irish government recognized a Palestinian state during attacks on Israel, attempted to redefine genocide in international law to support baseless claims against Israel at the ICJ, backed politically motivated cases at the ICC, promoted anti-Israel measures within the EU, and fostered hostility towards Israel.
Good.
Unquote. Israel said it will focus its energies on building relations with more friendly nations. Ireland's Prime Minister Simon Harris has called Israel's decision regrettable. In a statement on X, he said, quote, I utterly reject the assertion that Ireland is anti-Israel. Ireland is pro-peace, pro-human rights and pro-international law, unquote. He added, quote, Ireland wants a two-state solution and for Israel and Palestine to live in peace and security. Ireland will always speak up for human rights and international law, unquote. This does not mean that the two countries have severed diplomatic ties with each other, even though the relationship has been bumpy for months now.
Darn.
In May, Israel withdrew its ambassador from Ireland after Dublin recognized the Palestinian state. Israel did the same thing with Norway and Spain when they also recognized the Palestinian state. In the midst of this decision from Israel, Ireland's embassy in Tel Aviv will continue to function. There's also criticism from within Israel for Saar's decision from centrist opposition leader Yair Lapid. He called the decision of shutting down the embassy a victory for anti-Israel organizations. Lapid said the best way to deal with criticism is to stay and fight, not run away from it.
Sorry. What?
So once again, Ireland's doing the damn thing and actually is making a stand against Israel and actually being, as the kids say, based in their dealing, basically being like, we're not going to deal with the fuck shit that we're doing. We're going to stand in solidarity with South Africa in terms of the
I love
case that we're bringing against you regarding genocide.
I love the statement he made of trying to redefine genocide in the court. No, actually, they used actual, like they stated already, like cited international law and examples, including ones Israelis wrote themselves, like to define this genocide. And they're like, they're redefining it. No, they're not.
Right.
They're not. They know. They know what's up.
So let's get into more specifics in this. So this is from RTE. So this is like the Irish.
Yes.
The Irish equivalent of, I don't know, like New York Times.
Yep.
You know, whatever. So, so the article reads, Israel to close Dublin embassy over quote unquote anti-Israel policy. So let's continue. Israel will close its embassy in Dublin in light of the extreme anti-Israel policies of the Irish government.
Okay.
Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has said in a statement. It should be noted that in the past, Israel's ambassador to Dublin was recalled following Ireland's unilateral decision to recognize a Palestinian state, the statement said. Last week, Ireland announced its support for South Africa's legal action against Israel in the ICJ, accusing Israel of genocide. It added, oops. Oh, Taishi's. Oh, Lord, these Irish names. I butcher your name. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Taishish, I guess.
I should know that. There's rules for these.
I mean, this is your people somewhat.
Generally.
Your region or so.
Yeah, I'm one country over, but you're right.
Simon Harris has described the move as a deeply regrettable decision from the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In a statement on X, Mr. Harris said that he utterly rejected the assertion that Ireland is anti-Israel. Ireland is pro-peace, pro-human rights, and pro-international law, Mr. Harris said. Thank you. Speaking later, Mr. Harris said, what we're seeing unfolding in Gaza and in the West Bank is absolutely appalling, extraordinarily concerning, and Ireland has consistently spoken up in favor of peace and a ceasefire, and we've always called for the release of hostages, and we've always supported the work of international courts. Were you going to say something?
No, just, I mean, support more hostages. How about that? Give them more bargaining chips. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But
and while we will continue our diplomatic relations with Israel, we believe diplomatic relations are important, even when you vehemently disagree with the government of the country. We will not be in any way distracted by this development from continuing to speak out.
I love how no one ever claims that they like pushed for the freedom of the 9,000 Palestinians that are held in Israeli prisons. Apparently, those don't count as hostages. So,
oh, Chino said it's pronounced Taoiseach.
Taoiseach. Gaelic's weird.
Possible. Yeah. Yeah. So, assuming that's right, thank you. Tanaiste and Minister for Foreign Affairs.
That's Tanaiste. I know that one, I think.
Okay. And Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Tanaiste.
I guess that's Michael. I know it's probably not Michael, but Michael Martin has said there are no plans to close Israel's embassy in Israel, despite the development. I believe firmly in the importance of maintaining diplomatic channels of communication and regret that this decision has been taken, he said. On Wednesday, Mr. Martin secured government approval for Ireland to intervene in South Africa's case against Israel. The case was initiated following the launch of military operations in Gaza after the 7th of October attack. It concerns breaches of the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in Gaza. By filing a declaration of intervention, Ireland is not joining either side in the case. Mr. Martin proposed to intervene to promote a consistent interpretation of the Genocide Convention, which prioritizes the protection of civilian life, and to demonstrate Ireland's strong commitment to the rule of law and international justice. Last month, Mr. Harris said Irish authorities would detain Mr. Netanyahu if he traveled to Ireland after the ICJ issued an arrest warrant for him. Israel opposition leader Yair Lapid criticized his government's decision to close the embassy in Dublin. In a statement on X, he said, the way to deal with criticism is to not run away, but to stay and fight. Claims the decision was a victory for anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli organization. Mr. Lapid argued Israel needs to maintain embassies precisely in places where there are acute conflicts with the government, and a foreign minister who is only concerned with surrender and escaping conflicts is not doing his job. Chairman of the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland, Maurice Cohen, has said he is deeply concerned by the deterioration in relations between Ireland and Israel. While Ireland has always championed human rights and the rule of law, this intervention risks oversimplifying a highly complex and tragic conflict, unfairly isolating Israel, which I think they're doing their own damn selves, and undermining the integrity of the term genocide. Ireland's moral voice carries weight globally, and it is crucial that it reflects a fair and balanced approach, fostering dialogue rather than deep division, Mr. Cohen said in a statement.
Yeah, you don't get fair and balanced. Sorry. Fuck you. You know? Right. Like, it's just like, like, that's all I hear from that. You know?
Well, I get the both sides at language given the position that, you know, Ireland is in somewhat. I get that kind of. But you know, but I think, you know, the action that they're taking is, you know, that we are signing with South Africa in terms of the, you know, at minimum, I think that's a good thing. And, you know, I just wonder if there's more that can be done, you know, to really that stand. But
Yeah.
at minimum, it's making Israel pissed, which is always a good thing, I think, in my regard. But then the idea of like, oh, you have to listen to both sides. Well, the problem is like Ireland has.
Yeah.
And you don't like that they're taking a side, essentially.
Well,
over
part
you.
of the problem is Ireland's own history. You know,
Right.
like it's dealt with its own colonial powers frequently, and they got pretty good at dealing with them. I hear. You know,
Right.
a lot of people were afraid to start their cars for a while, so you know,
Look, I told this. Look, I told this. I think I've told this story several times, but like I grew up in the UK in the era of the NRA, and like in the
IRA.
80s, and I remember this specific time. I had to be about 5 or 6 years old, and I remember I wanted to go to the zoo. My mom was going to take me to the zoo. I was excited to go to the zoo, and we ended up not going because there was a bomb that was detonated in central London. So we didn't go to the zoo. But I remember, that visual in my mind of bomb and how that affected me not going to the zoo stuck with me. So
yeah, but they called to make sure that the actual normal folks knew there was going to be a bomb. They only wanted to kill cops. Usually, that was their only goal most of the time. You know, not that I would condone any terrorist organization like the IRA, but you know, it doesn't mean I don't have some balaclava buddies. You know, so
right,
like. They had some points, but you know, Patty McGuinness decided, you know, scones with the Queen seemed like a better time. So, you know, like once you meet with the Queen, you kind of lose your will to fight the fucking powers, huh? Funny how that works. But yeah, I mean, they've had a long history. Muhammad Ali called it back then that Ireland was also part of this fight, so. Glad they've been there. Shout out to Claire Daly, Mick Wallace. Been at it for a minute, talking about this kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, craziness. But I mean, this is par for the course, though, for Israel. They're gonna do that everywhere.
Right.
So
yeah, so not really surprised, but
no.
But at least we have a Western nation who's willing to take a formal stand against them in this way. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops, if anything.
Yeah, I would like the ICJ stuff to not just be strongly worded letters, you know? Right. But anyway, you were saying?
But talking about that story as well, and others like that as well, we're demonetized. So if you want to support us, feel free to scan the QR code if you have a smartphone that you see on your screen, or go to the link that you see below your screen at kofi.com/indienewsnetwork. And you can give as little as $1 towards helping us grow and to continue producing the show and other shows in the network so that you're able to watch them for your viewing pleasure. And most importantly, because YouTube thinks we suck and we're not viable in terms of ad revenue, the only way that we're able to grow and to promote this network even more is through viewers like you. So please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share our clips and content to help fight the suppression that we're seeing online. And be sure to leave a comment if you watch any of our clips or if you watch any of our live streams. We really do appreciate it. We do read them. We do take, ones that are obviously not bots to heart, as they can give us ideas of what to talk about as far as future segments. So your participation and your connection with us helps us get better. And we hope by next year that we're able to get to 3K, hopefully a lot higher than that. But like, we'll say we're 3K for now, since we are at just under 2,300 subs right now. So
we're almost at 27, so you can make that happen. Or what is it, 20, 23? So we're just under
23. Just under
yeah,
23.
that's it.
We're 20 away from 23.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. So, and thank you for watching. We love you.
Yeah. All right, before we get to that depressing stuff, let's go to the chats. What do we got? We'll go check the Rumble real quick. Looks like it's all lizard people on Rumble. Use those opposable thumbs, get in that chat. What do we got? Vicky Adams, Israel can bite me. Fucking Nazis. Ireland is boss, says bad cookies.
Yeah.
Again, you said T-Shock, right? Yeah. Irish names can be weird.
Look, I lived in England. I know.
Yeah, it's like, but there's also like two pronunciations of them all, right? There's like the anglicized English version of them, right? And then the actual Gaelic version, like Taj Hickey on right? Like talked with him once, and it's like, to me, the way it's spelled out Gaelically would be like Tach, right? But it's like that wasn't. He was like, it's like Tige, like tiger, and it's like, yeah, that's the anglicized version, So
right,
but whatever's. But yeah, Indy talking about Luigi. New info: there was missing persons report filed on Luigi November 18th by his mom in San Fran. Journalist George Webb has been trying to retrace Luigi's steps for all of 2024. George also thinks Luigi could have allegedly taken out the OpenAI whistleblower. That seems fucking take, I guess. I don't know why he'd go after that one. But sure. Anyway, all right, let's just get to our last one. I'm sure people are ready for that one. But anyway, so did you?
This is the one that you want to depress us with the last segment of.
Yep. I could have done it earlier, but I figured it better be till the end so that people can feel its full impact. Do you see anything about this at all?
I did read some of it last night,
and
yeah, I was depressed.
Yeah,
but I understand why you wanted to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I figured this is going to be our last live show for like this year, make sure that people are kind of like focused up and that this stuff is still happening and will happen over the holidays. And like, I want people's eyeballs to still be open. And I definitely want you to make sure your family's eyeballs are still open so you can send them this kind of stuff. And it's a bit brutal. So, prep your emotional butts. But this is from Caitlin Johnstone. We've been a minute since we've done her. So, meditations on a 6-year-old amputee crawling through Gaza with the help of a roller skate. Yeah, that bad. She writes, "It's funny the things that get to you when witnessing the nightmares in Gaza. Out of all the horrors you'll see there from day to day, today I saw a video of a 6-year-old Palestinian boy whose legs had been amputated, dragging himself through his tent camp with the help of a roller skate worn on one of his hands. And it just about destroyed me. It was one of those inline skates that showed up in the 90s. Rollerblades, we called them. Western boys played with them in summers full of joy and laughter and skinned knees and grass stains. Now, a little boy named Mohammed Saeed uses one to help him scoot through the dirt because his legs were blown off by a Western military explosive, launched by Israelis who possibly played with inline skates when they were small." So she put this tweet up saying, "We are the terrorists," which, by the way, the comments were fucking awful.
Of course.
A Palestinian boy in Gaza with both legs amputated after being bombed by the Israelis uses roller skates. I mean, I feel like we should just let the video speak for itself, So
محمد سعيد قديش عمره؟
6 years old. There is no mind on power except through God. May God keep you safe. You know, folks, that this is the first time. What was that? The first time I see this child. I saw him coincidentally while I was passing through the tents. As soon as I saw him, I turned on the camera and started filming. I'm shocked. I don't know what to say. May God compensate him in the world before the next. Him and his family. Praise be to God.
وانه احنا لازم نشكر ربنا كل يوم، نحمد الله كل يوم على النعم اللي احنا فيها. الحمد لله يا اخوان، الحمد لله. ايقنت انه الدنيا هذه ثانيه ومش مستاهله نهائي.
So that was the video Caitlin witnessed. Thoughts so far, Care Bear? I mean, it's rough. So, but
this is what our taxes is going to. And we don't care. So I do not want to hear shit libs going at me for, oh, you didn't vote for Biden, and like, well, we have to work with Kamala and push her left on the issue. No, fuck that. Because I'm sure his legs got blown off during this administration. And he's not going to get the care to even, get legs. Like, God forbid that some organization takes pity on him and takes him to like a hospital somewhere where he's able to, get prosthetics or whatever. But that's not going to be likely for him.
Well, and we got Captain Pegleg in Congress trying to tell people Israel's the greatest. Meanwhile, we've got kids with the same fate caused by us. So,
right.
Yeah. But I felt like it was important to witness for sure. So, I think with a lot of the distractions recently, people kind of forgot what was happening there a bit, So we'll let Tim Foley finish this one out.
This genocide has been going on so long that the child amputees who live all over Gaza are learning strategies to get through life without limbs. They did a study recently which found that virtually all children in Gaza now feel their deaths are imminent, and half of those surveyed said they wish to die.
Yeah.
But their lives go on. Even with missing limbs, often amputated without morphine or anesthetic, their lives go on. Crawling their way through muddy tent camps, they go on. They find a way through each day. It's the kind of thing that might inspire you if it were something you were just passively witnessing, instead of something the Western power structure you live under is actively inflicting on people. For those of us who live under the shadow of the U.S. centralized empire, it's a bit more emotionally complicated than an inspirational story about the indomitable spirit of the Palestinian people, because it's also a story about how we failed to stop this from happening. When we look at Mohammed Saeed crawling through the dirt on his leg stumps with the help of a roller skate, we are seeing our own civilization reflected back at us, a genocidal dystopia of complete moral bankruptcy. This is what we have become. This is what we have allowed our rulers to turn us into. Oh, Mohammed, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that we allowed it to come to this. I am sorry that your legs were taken from you, And I am sorry for everything else that has been taken away from you on top of them. Your parents, maybe. Your siblings, maybe. Certainly some loved ones. Obviously your home. And obviously your childhood. I have nothing to offer at this time, either to my readers or to Muhammad Saeed, apart from my own sorrow. Some days all you can do is pour your heart out on the floor and warn passers-by to try not to slip on it, tears streaming over the gaping hole in your chest. None of this is right, and I don't feel like pretending it's right. I don't feel like trying to put a positive spin on it or say it's all going to get better. Some things are just terrible, and it's okay to feel terrible about them. Feelings are meant to be felt. It is sad, and it's enraging, and it's shameful, and it's damning, and absolutely nothing else. We live in a world of such breathtaking beauty and such jaw-dropping savagery. Explosions of love hiding behind every molecule in a society that is ruled by true monsters. We are big enough to hold these paradoxes. We are big enough to feel the majesty of creation and the gut punch of genocide. The wet, juicy, sloppy love for our fellow human beings, and the horror at how cruel we can be to one another. The exhilaration of life on this strange blue planet, and the crushing grief of failure after failure to make things a little bit better here. Both the good and the bad are allowed to flourish in this world. Clearly. I have no answers or miracle cures for this. We do our best to be decent people and get through each day. We pick up our skate and crawl on.
Well, gotta keep crawling. That's about as best we can do at the minute. So,
Bad Cookies in the chat said, I effing care, Collin. But what the fuck am I supposed to do? I have zero power to change any of this. You may not have power to change his life, unfortunately. But you have power to change what you can affect in your own community. And it sounds like a cop-out, but I think really it's the only way you can counter seeing gruesome things like this is to do as much good, as Caitlin said, as you can physically can. And I'm going to keep saying this until I'm blue in the face. There's going to be a lot. Look, the opportunities are there anyway, but the opportunities are going to open up all the more within the next few weeks.
mm-hmm.
But as I keep saying, and I think this will probably be my final thing I say for tonight and probably for 2024, heading into 2025. If you say you're about it, prove it.
Mm-hmm.
The activism on Twitter is not cutting it, folks. You can't pretend like, oh, I support this thing and all this kind of stuff, but then you vote in a way that counters what you say. You can't be like, oh, I'm pro-Palestine, I'm for the Palestinians, but you're not engaging with any of them in your community to figure out what they need. And just as a story, like, I had a friend, and I don't want to put him on blast, but like, he was talking about Palestine a lot on Instagram, but then like when it came to voting, he voted for Kamala and to justify his answer, he put up, and I forgot exactly what it is, but it was like a black pastor who was like, I forgot the context of it. And I was like, I get what you're doing, but at the same time, what are Palestinians saying? Like, have you talked to any? Have you spoken to any? Do you know how they're feeling? Do you know what they're thinking? Do you know what their plan of action is? Like, if I want to know something from people directly, I would do my best to talk to them directly, but I'm not going to take the experience of another oppressed people and kind of justify into, oh, because this person or representative of this oppressed group is saying this, then that will equivocate to what another oppressed group might be saying. I think that's wrong. And I didn't like the way he kind of made that connection. Like, and if you don't know any, find some. Like, you know, we will do our best to try and connect with lesser known people in the space or otherwise to try and interview them. That's always been our goal, but I think especially more so.
Yeah.
But again, you know, like, the only way you can counter evil is to do good wherever you're at. And it may not help Muhammad's condition like now, but your work will kind of hopefully make a better future, not just for Palestinians, but for everybody. So I get it. Like, there's a lot that's out our control. And I'm not telling you to do anything that's necessarily out of control, but there are things within your control, that within your realm of existence, that you can, you know, participate in. Your challenge is to figure out what those are and get involved, but get involved in a way that it's long term, as you know, our patron saint Kwame Ture would say, the thing, well, eternal. Like, organization is eternal. So what are the things that you're going to do long term, not in the moment or something that's trending, because it's the trendy thing to say.
What was that quote I sent you the other day about education from him?
I want to do it justice, but I have it, so I'm just gonna...
Okay. While you do that, I'll read Misty's last statement to Caitlin on this. She quotes Caitlin with "It's funny the things that get to you," and says, "This article got to me. It's an overwhelming feeling watching such horrors play out before, when you know you are absolutely powerless to do anything to stop it." Which I'm kind of with her on that. I know we're not completely powerless, but they've definitely not left us a lot of options. So, but I think that education's a big part of this. I think making people aware is about the best thing you can do right now, until America realizes it's at rock bottom. You know.
Yeah. So I'll show everybody. I'll show our fam. So this Reef got me this awesome print of Kwame Ture for me for Christmas. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But on the receipt, and you told me this before I got it, but this was the quote that you sent to me. So he said, "The road to empowerment is paved with education." So I think, honestly, if I get a second tattoo, I probably might have that on me. But yeah, I think really, and I think that's our role, really, I think that's been our role of independent media, or at least holistically, is to educate and to have people learn in a way that might challenge you, but in a way that you're able to respond. And I think really moving forward, we need to figure out what we need, how we need to respond in a changing system where, as I said, protests, while they were a thing back in the day that did work, are not working. I'm just going
Yep.
to say that. I'm just going to admit that protests don't work because they infiltrate that shit. They will walk in solidarity with you on that shit, and that's what we said in a previous segment. They don't care. It's like they expect you to, out of courtesy, they will sympathize with you, but then they're just like, well, these people are not serious. So you need to hit them in their money bags.
And
that's the only way that people are going to respond to anything.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out what that is and how to really make that stand financially where people are able to think or at least take a pause in doing certain actions that would fuck us over. But yeah, I think just ultimately do good. Whatever that means for you and your community. That's the thing. That's what you have control of. You know, that's why I always say take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Take care of your communities. And we're heading into the holiday season. Well, we're in it, but like next week is when many of us are going to be celebrating with our families. Hope maybe some of us won't be. And, you know, and I want to honor those who may not have family to celebrate the holidays with. This is, for many people, a very awful time, maybe financially if you're trying to get gifts, or like if you're like struggling right now, you're not seeing the hope that the season is supposed to represent. Still, do good in whatever that means for you. Like, and doing good just might mean taking a day off work. Like, take care of yourself, feed yourself, like, honor you. You know? So, yeah. So I think that's really all I want to say as we end tonight's stream is, you know, do good.
Yep.
Be good in whatever that means for you, in whatever capacity that means for you. But, you know, more directly, if you want to show your family the street, show people this clip, you know, and like and share our
Yeah.
content, please. Like, I normally don't beg, but I'm not begging, but, you know, as we say, you know, we want to do things differently in this. We don't want to be the typical channel where you'll just hear like the trending stories. And again, that might be fine, but we want to do things in an authentic way that reflects who we are. And that's what, you know, YouTube doesn't like. But, you know, so that's our commitment to you guys moving forward, is that no matter what happens, that's what we intend to do, and we need support in order for us to do it. So, you know, so please help us in finding the suppression that we have online. Leave a comment. You know, we're heading into the new year. A lot of you are going to make resolutions. Like, you know, I don't believe in that, but think of ways of how you can get active in your community or in your family, whatever that means, and do as much good as possible. And we really appreciate you guys watching our content this year and continue to help us grow so that we're able to build out. We have, I don't want to say now, but we have plans for 2025.
Yep.
That we will love to share with you once we got everything up and rolling. But, you know, but we're looking in ways to grow, but grow in a way outside of YouTube. It's very obvious that YouTube is trying to suppress us so that we do not grow to the extent like maybe our other colleagues, which in a way is we kind of consider a badge of honor, because we're actually doing something we believe that is a good thing. And so we need your help to do that. And we really appreciate you guys supporting us this year and in the year to come. And thank you for watching.
Julio. Next week, as far as Wednesday is concerned, I'm gonna figure something out. I might do something with some other INN members if I've got time. We'll see. I might just run over some reruns. I could use 2 weeks off.
Yeah. So, like I said, we will put out content. It will not be unless, and follow us on Twitter if there's any updates, but we're not anticipating much live content over the next 2 weeks. I think all of us are going to take a well-deserved break, hang out with our families. And as I said at the beginning of the stream, it'll give Reef and I, even though I'll be traveling, it'll give us an opportunity to start planning on what we want to hit for next year, how we want to build out the show, things that we want to do. We want to change up some stuff.
Yeah.
Some nice stuff. So having the time to actually do that. And yeah, we will be live again January 8th. Just FYI. So, but we'll have content, but it won't be live.
Yep.
So
always keep an eye on Twitters and stuff at Get Indie News and the Substack, which should be, all links are always in the description for that kind of stuff. And you can always go to indienewsnetwork, should be our Linktree. You can find all that stuff there. Just to keep an eye on updates and when we go live, best way to do that. Anything else? We're working on some new merch stuff. So keep an eye out for that. We're working on making that a little more better deal for you guys.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes, but yeah, we'll look into some stuff. But anyway, what's the? Oh, remember, kids, labels are bad.
Oh wait. These same things.
Okay.
One-on-one with the
Dissident Saturday night. Yeah,
what
which
time
you did
Indy?
already. Probably at same time that Shanda and Oz would be doing stuff, because I think they're not doing one. That's what he planned. So 10. So I think that was the plan. So keep an eye on that. But I think that's it. So remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week. Have a great holiday. We'll see you next year.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.